Hi, my name is Amanda Parris, and I'm a writer, producer, and television host who is very happy to welcome you here to this talk with Romeo Candido. Romeo Candido is a screenwriter, director, producer, composer, performer, and mentor who for over 2 decades has charted his own singular journey, exemplifying artistic excellence and passion for community every step of the way. His screenwriting has transported us from prisons in the Philippines to spaceships in the outer reaches of the galaxy. His directing ranges from sitcoms to horror films to dance troupes, and his musical scores fuse contemporary pop with traditional Filipino rhythms. Our conversation today is going to traverse the entire arena of his career, and he's going to drop a ton of gems, so please stay tuned. Hi, Romeo.
Hi, Amanda Parris.
So, okay.
Hi, Amanda Parris.
I mean, you have so many titles.
Okay.
Director.
Sure.
Writer.
Take it.
Producer.
Yeah.
Composer.
Yes.
Musician.
Word.
Actor.
Yeah.
Mentor.
Maybe.
You've worked in scripted, unscripted, you've made music videos, TV series, short docs, feature-length films, done some editing. We're not even gonna start with your theater work. If you had to describe yourself in one sentence in terms of your work and your breadth, what would it be?
Up to this point, I would say I am a multidisciplinary, multi-platform storyteller, artist who's expressed his human experience through a Filipino lens.
Up
Period.
until this point.
Period.
Multi, and is about to enter the multiverse.
Multiverse.
Yes.
A multi-dimensional being who jumps culture. No, nothing.
So let's start at the beginning. When did you know that film and television was something that you wanted to pursue?
After I did Miss Saigon to start in theater,
As an actor?
As a performer, I don't know if I was acting, but as a performer, I toured a one-man show called Eat Away at Me. Like, it's something that really eats away at me. And then a director, I think a real Asian alumni named Paul Lee, had seen my one-man show as part of the Asian Heritage Month Festival. And he said, this should be a movie. Your one-man show should be a movie. And then he eventually just dropped out of the project. And because there was money, I said, okay, let me learn how to direct. Because I kind of, even during Miss Saigon, the first paycheck I spent it on was on getting a video camera, and I was making behind the scenes documentaries. So I always wanted to do it, but I never went to school, never thought I could do it. Got some grants, and then it was almost this thing where because a director dropped out and I wanted to act so bad, I said, I'll learn how to direct so I can act in my own film. And then because I did, and so with the first film, Lolo's Child, celebrating its 20th anniversary, playing at the Real Asian Film Festival, that was the first thing I ever did. I had never done a short. I had never done a music video.
You went straight into feature and acting and directing, and I'm guessing producing it as well too.
Yeah, more or less. I had a producing partner, Marian Ledesma, who came after a bunch of producers who kind of left the project because we shot on Super 16 film. There were no desktop editing software in existence yet. We didn't have money for post, so I shot a film and I sat on the film for a long time. Then Jennifer Podemski said, well, you should meet my editor, and then I learned how to edit. And then once I learned how to edit, then I finished the film. And that's when I'm like, okay. And it's one of those things, I never went to school. I never went to university. The only job that I could get to hold down while I was doing Lolo's Child was like working as an usher at I couldn't get a job. So once I made my first film, which took 7-8 years, then that's when I realized, okay, this is what I want to do. I never want to act again, ever again in my life.
The experience of doing that turned you off, or were there other experiences in between that turned you off?
Watching myself on big screens.
Right, because in theater you never had to watch yourself.
No, you're just screaming and hi, and then find your light. But watching myself made me realize I didn't want to. It fulfilled the part of my ego that needed to do it. but I never had to do it again. And then so I learned how to edit. I said I was a director, like I directed a film. So from that point on, I said, okay, this is what I'm gonna do.
So I have a question. It feels like you stumbled into the act of filmmaking. However, when you were younger and you were growing up and you were watching films and you were watching things on television, was this ever something that you were like, oh, this thing looks cool, I want to be a part of this world?
I didn't think I could be part of the world. You know, I grew up in Kingston, Ontario. The movie that really kind of set it off for me was School Days. Um, and I just remember watching the actors and really admiring Spike Lee. But I didn't think I could be part of it. And then when I got into Miss Saigon, then I said maybe I could become an actor because it was tangible. I saw Filipinos on stage. You know what I mean? There was a reference for me to.
Yeah, that was what I was kind of wondering, because I know for so many folks, you need to see an example
Yes.
of yourself in order to imagine yourself in that space. In so much of your career, you've kind of been the person that people see as
Yeah.
opposed to seeing it for yourself. So what did it take?
Yeah, I think it's the, you know, part of the directing thing and part of putting myself up on screen was me fulfilling the I've never seen like I literally never saw myself up on screen. So I put myself up, like I literally put myself up on screen, and then I realized that I could use my position as a director and as a writer to start putting up everybody else on screen, and that gave me a different ego fulfillment, and it gave me a different purpose, and so I just kind of stuck with it.
So much of your earlier work is focused on telling the stories of Filipino families, Filipino culture, Filipino community. Can you talk about that motivation and how that drove a lot of your earlier work and your earlier pursuits?
I always told Filipino stories because I didn't know what else to talk about. You know, there were I was in a Filipino boy band, and we were singing black music, and we were kind of like singing what R&B artists sung, but like it never fit. I never fit in it because I'm like, that's not my experience. I don't go to clubs. I don't like, you know, I don't do these things that like at the time it was like R. Kelly and Usher. Like, this is not my life. Um, and as a storyteller, I'm like, what am I like? It's either do the things that I know or Star Wars. Like, there was no like I had nothing else to talk about. You know, do I want to make a Filipino rom-com? Sure, but like I didn't know how to write white people things at the time, and frankly, there were no other Filipinos chasing that Ontario Arts Council, Canada Arts Council check, and so I'm like, well, if these funding bodies are gonna fund me because I'm the only Filipino person, I just used that as a thing. Like, it's like, okay, there's money, I have a specific voice, I'm the only one doing it at this point. Like, it took a long time after Lolo's Child for another Filipino feature film to come.
Like a responsibility?
See, I don't know what's my ego and what was actual true purpose. Like, I think they were happening at the same time because no one else was doing it. I could get the money. And then all of my collaborators were like Filipino. Like, I worked with Ron Jossel. Like, you could say he's the first Filipino professional Filipino stand-up comic. I was working with the Kuya, which was a R&B group. They were out there doing it. So I was working with the Filipinos who were kind of breaking into the industry. And
There was
then
like a wave of folks that you were a part of, I guess.
I feel like I've been part of like multiple waves of the Filipino arts community coming up in Toronto. Yeah, like when I started putting together the things that we want to show at Relation, I'm like, I almost filmed everybody. I've almost I've almost pointed a camera at like 80% of the people who are Filipino working in
So
the
it's like you
community.
accidentally also created an archival project.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. For a lot of people, it was their first time on camera. Still, even with Topline, even with my latest project, so many first timers on camera. And for me, A, I think it keeps me young, and B, I think emerging talent is actually really exciting. Like, because they're not bogged down with technique, they're not bogged down with tricks, they don't have a deep toolkit. So when you're working with emerging talent, you could just find their magic that's been, unsullied by the industry.
It's funny that you talked about keeping you young, because as I was looking at all of your work and just thinking about your career, I've kind of nailed down what I would identify as 3 of your superpowers. Do you want to hear them?
Okay, I'm scared.
Okay. So you're very tapped into your inner child, which allows you to bring joy and also silliness everywhere, connects you with young people, and also allows you to write from their perspective without condescension to you.
Oh, that was the first power.
That was the first.
That was a big power. Okay.
Yeah. Would you say that that's accurate?
I think that's true. I'm an Aries. We're the babies of the zodiac.
Also, the sign that Lizzo hates the most.
Thanks, Amanda Parris. Camera 2, focus in. Thanks, Amanda Parris.
I didn't say I hate you guys. It was Lizzo. Okay. Anyway.
Yes. Inner child, very much intact, yes.
Okay. Number 2, you find humor in anything, including the inappropriate, which gives your work a signature comedic energy, but also makes your sets a place of fun no matter the content being produced.
Yes. As someone who's been on a set, is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah, inappropriate humor.
Inappropriate humor, yes. Okay. But also, I remember when my husband and I were watching Shorty, he was like, Romeo definitely wrote this, right? Like, he could hear your voice throughout it. Like, it's a very signature comedic tone that you have that he could hear right away. And you're an empath, which makes your work go straight for the heart and also means you cry at singing competition videos.
Yes. I don't know if that's a superpower, but yes.
Crying at singing competition may not be, but...
Like, a villain could exploit that. Like, I could be fighting them, and then they'll play an American Idol bio, and then...
What life do you live?
I don't know.
Okay. So those were what I would say are your 3 superpowers. How do you feel like those 3 things, if you agree that they are your superpowers, have enabled you to move through this industry?
Well, I want to go to the first one about this inner child, I have the child version of me. I feel like even this is like, gem, key type of thing for writers and stuff. But I feel like when I write a character, to give them a drive and to give them a purpose and to give them a want in every scene, I have to identify the trauma of that character. What's the trauma that separated them from their innocence? Because as children, as innocent children, we think we're perfect. We're children of God. Everything's beautiful. I'm beautiful. But everything's possible. And then there is a trauma that separates us from that feeling of, our God state, our child state. And that trauma then informs how we interact with the world, how we interact with a person, how we interact with a job, and I feel like, my trauma that separated me from my innocence is the fact that I was different, or the fact that I was brown in a white world, or it was that thing. And so then it informs everything. So then I'm constantly looking at people who feel different, putting them at ease. I'm constantly looking at people who feel separate from their childlike wonder, and I'm trying to let them live that out. And so in all of my work, I think, and that's the joy. It's like the return to joy, return to possibility, return to innocence. And so there's, even though it's my inappropriate humor, like the inappropriate humor is it's just pointing at the things that we create to hide ultimately the most vulnerable and childlike part of ourselves. And so when I look at a prison dancer, or when I look at a Lolo's Child, or when I look at a Top Line, it's our protagonists are trying to move past their trauma to return to something. And a lot of times it's to return to wonder, return to expression. And I think as somebody who's been in this industry and as a storyteller, now I can apply that not just to Filipinos, but it's taken me 20 years to understand why and like what made me tick, what makes my characters tick. And now I feel like I could apply it to cultures outside of Filipino.
I mean, you describe yourself as the person when you're growing up as the one who was different, and I think you have it on record as the first Filipino person born in Newfoundland.
I think so. I think I'm the first Filipino born in Newfoundland since Newfoundland joined the Confederation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, there's no Filipino Newfoundlander archivist who's like, who was born.
We haven't fact checked, but we're pretty sure. We're pretty sure. But
Pretty
anyway,
sure.
this, and you've described yourself as growing up as the outsider. So can you talk about how this perspective as the outsider, how you utilized it, what it gave to you beyond what you've just described, and also like, do you still hold that feeling as the outsider?
Well, I think as the outsider, it gave me the big fear of failure. Like I think what drove like what would make somebody write direct me in his own first feature film and not like I look at that guy and it's just the fear of failing. Like as an outsider, I started musical theater, but I wasn't quite good enough in it, so I couldn't get a job again. As an outsider, I couldn't fit into a R&B boy band. As an outsider, I couldn't fit in, so then as an outsider, it gave me the ability to then observe everybody else. And so as an observer, and I think I'm just curious. It's like, I just kind of think everybody's strange. And so I'm always looking at what makes them tick. And so I think that's why, as a director, I've been an observer at the same time as somebody who's felt on the outside and never saw my experience reflect to me. I had to dig and understand who I was because I would resonate with different things of different people's projects, but it wouldn't be my full experience. And so then I would need to express it as a means to almost feel real in the world. And so now I'm fucking forever an outsider. I'm an outsider. Like now I'm an outsider who's finding other outsiders to be outsidery with.
Like you're creating your own community.
Or I'm just kind of tagging on to other people's trains, so to speak. Like,
so wait, sorry, you just said you're forever outsider. Is that like you're predetermining it? Like, do you think that that's just because of the nature of this? And we're talking specifically about within the industry, not necessarily the world, but like within the industry, do you feel like because of the nature of it, you are destined to always be outside? Because you've been working for 20 years, as you just mentioned.
Yeah, but I'm still I am the outsider. The last 5 sets, I'm looking at mostly white crews. When I'll find the Filipino, the art department or craft services or whatever, and they know they're my people day one. I'm like, are you Filipino? Like, who was it I was talking to? I was talking to a guy named Roel, who's like Indian. I go, wait, are you Filipino? And he's like, no, I'm not Filipino. I'm like, your name is Roel. You might so I'm an outsider, but I will find until Top Line felt like, because I got to build it, that became, but I'm still an outsider because I'm the eldest and I've been through all of the things. So while everybody else was experiencing the newness of being on a set like that, I'm, you know what I mean? So it's only when I meet Filipino directors from the Philippines with multiple projects but still, again, I'm not from the Philippines.
In the diaspora.
Yeah, I'm in the diaspora. So when you say building community, I feel like I've been mentoring people who don't feel like they have a community, and then maybe in that way I'm kind of fostering a community.
Can we talk a little bit about that moment when you did go to the Philippines and you worked as a filmmaker? Because I know so many people talk about not being able to find success in Canada, and then the assumption is that you're going to go to the US. But I'm so curious about you going to the Philippines and like why you made that decision and what that experience was like and how it shaped your trajectory in your perspective.
Well, before I went to the Philippines, I was cobbling together government grants. I did the poor artist thing for 10 years. And then my film, Rolling Longanisa, silly little movie about a Filipino sausage maker in Markham, got the attention of one of the biggest advertising agencies in the Philippines. They saw it. They saw my approach to art direction, my kind of quirky humor. And then, literally, I went to the Philippines, came back, and a week later, and I dropped off the film with an agency person, and then a week later they go, do you want to come to the Philippines and basically direct the biggest campaign of the year? So it was like Imagine I went from doing a CBC short film for ZTV. Um, Shout out Sharon Lewis, shout out Nobu Edelman, shout out Jen Oano, shout out McLean Greaves. I did a short film that took place in my house. We made all the food, we did whatever, and then the next, like, because of that, I was in the Philippines. Like, imagine, like, in the agency briefs, they're like, Direk, that's what you call a director in the Philippines. Direk, is 400 extras enough for you? Like,
You went from like this scale to like this scale.
400 extras in an arena with the biggest rock band of the Philippines, called River Maya, for their big telecom, and that was one day. And there was like 8 day. It was an 8 day shoot, and like in one day, as a director in the Philippines, you can get paid in one day what it would cost you to live life for a year in the Philippines. And so, like, I've had these quantum jumps in my life. So I'm a theater school, failing out of theater school, then all of a sudden Miss Saigon. I'm an independent filmmaker, you know, shooting everything on mini DV. Then I become one of the kind of like, I land the biggest commercial campaign in the Philippines. I'm, you know, working at CBC Arts, you know, writing things, you know, and then all of a sudden I get a big Apple show, you know. So I've had these quantum jumps, but the Philippines was this working on a set with all Filipinos was mind blowing. Like, they all looked like my titos. They all looked like my uncles and aunties. Like, we're eating Filipino food. We're working with Filipino talent, but again, I was an outsider because I don't speak Tagalog very well. So I'd be in agency briefs. There'd be 40 people talking in a boardroom, and I don't fucking understand what people are talking about. So there's a lot of winging, but once I'm directing, directing is a language that I feel very comfortable doing and speaking. But the Philippines, like, I did my second feature film there. I was like performing in like the cool kind of bar that all the musicians performed at. I had access to money all of a sudden. Like, for me, it just expanded me in a way that moving to the States wouldn't have expanded me, and living in Canada wouldn't have expanded me. Like, I expanded as a human. I expanded as an artist because then I learned how to use all the toys. And then there was something about like manifesting things happened. Like, I felt like my manifesting powers in the Philippines were way stronger than in Canada.
So why did you come back?
I came back because I was the hot boy directing commercials. Then I left to do my horror movie, Ang Pamana. Then I also stayed to direct a theater show called The Romance of Magno Rubio. And then when I tried to get back to commercials, I wasn't the hot boy anymore. Like, I followed my artistic path. Like, even when I was directing commercials, I still just wanted to make a film. But then when I tried to get back into commercials, I'm like, oh no, shit, fuck, I want to make money again. I wasn't the hot boy, and I was on set directing a commercial for pig vitamin.
Did you say pig?
Pig vitamin.
Okay.
Evetricin, something. So it's like, it's a vitamin that accelerates the growth of pigs from 3 weeks to 6 weeks.
Cool.
And it was a commercial for like farmers. And after like going to 3 pig farms to figure out which we're going to shoot, and then we're shooting a commercial, and then trying to make a little pig drink from a trough with a bunch of burly, sweaty Filipino men with hot lights going, here, piggy, piggy. And meanwhile, this pig has seen all of his family pigs slaughtered. And then I'm like, I don't think this is, like, it was in the middle of the commercial. I'm like, I really don't fucking think this is for me anymore.
Right.
Like, I want to be an artist. Now I'm, you know, scrambling just to direct a pig vitamin commercial. And then I'm like, I think I need to go back to Canada. And so my sliding door was, I was offered a Gatorade commercial in Vietnam, which sounded amazing, or get a job in Canada for Much Music. And so I decided to come home.
Okay. So you've seen so many waves in the Canadian film industry.
Sure.
So many things have happened.
Yeah.
We are come out of that 2020 wave of which people have called a cultural reckoning,
Yeah.
where a lot of people apologized for a lot of things. A lot of sorries were heard. A lot of new folks were put into positions of power, which was exciting, but also kind of scary because you're being put in a position of power at a moment of crisis.
Yeah.
And now it's 2 years later. We see huge cuts happening in the United States.
Yeah.
Scary cuts to a lot of things. How would you define this moment in the Canadian film and television industry? Is it one that you feel hopeful about? Is it one that you feel nervous about? Is it one that you see a lot of opportunity? Just how would you define it?
I feel like because there's a lot of work, there's more access in, and there's like BIPOC TV and film, and then they're doing incredible work, and you look at the people running CFC, and and like there's a lot of people who are kind of like my contemporaries in positions of power. So I know there's like breaking in now and breaking in when I fucking broke in is not the same. Like even though there's scary cuts, and even though there's like, when I broke in, I didn't even know what a writer's room was. Like you had to go to the CFC to do the television program to even understand what that track of career was. Like now all of the information's out there. Writers are the stars now. Like I think there's way more opportunity now, and way more, like the show I'm directing right now, Popularity Papers. The showrunner is Vivian Lin. She's a Asian woman. And then I'm coming off of my own showrunning gig, working on the next step where I'm a Filipino showrunner, co-showrunner. And so I think it's for people who want to do this and make a living and not like be poor for 20 years. I think it's better now. Like I'm more hopeful now, because when I was coming up, there was nothing. There were no examples, no nothing.
If you could change one thing in the industry today, what would it be?
I would I would hold all the institutions to maintain their kind of quotas. Like there's a lot, like, there's quotas that CBC had to do. Like there's different quotas, but the one thing I'd want to change is the people who are kind of putting those quotas in place, they need to help bridge the people who aren't ready to jump into those positions. Like fortunately, this is the year where I've broken in and I'm kind of directing a lot, but I also had 20 fucking years of this. So I could see if somebody was being given that kind of shot and they weren't quite ready or weren't trained up for it, like it could be.
Because in this industry, you kind of, if you don't succeed in that one shot
you have a shot, but like, and if you fuck up that shot, it'll be harder than if you were unknown to get back in. And it's easy to fuck up our shots. Like, I'm not going to sit, like, even with me, like when I'm bringing people in, I'm tough now. Like I've earned the right to be tough on people who are coming in, because I knew what it was like. So I just feel like there needs to be more. I just think there needs to be more programs. If people are going to be making money from it, like, sets are still white. White male directors are still running the show. The showrunners, it's still not, there's no gender parity. It's not fully like equal. But, so the training programs, I just feel like whoever's making a lot of money, they should be forced to like really
to support as they lift them up.
Support, and not just check a box and give people an opportunity and set people up for failure.
What's something that you know now that you wish you knew when you were coming up?
That having a day job while doing my art thing is not a negative thing. Like, like I was always grateful for making money, because like I know it was like, but like it's taken me so long, and now that I'm in it, like if I made it when I think intellectually I think I should have made it, then I would not have done my CBC arts time. And like, I've always been grateful for the little communities, but like I didn't maybe I held it of less value than the thing that I truly wanted, that I really wanted to do. But like the one thing I would just try to reframe all of my thinking so they're all valuable and they're all helping facilitate my highest purpose.
Right. So all the hustles, even the ones that we
Even
think
when
are
I
on
was
the
working at the
side.
green room, even when I was like working a telemarketing job, like they're all valuable. But for some reason, because I saw some contemporaries like doing it, I felt ashamed that I had to do a 9 to 5. And I wish I just did not have that shame. And I didn't. No, really, truly, I wish I didn't compare myself to other people who I thought were more successful. I think that's the big one. Yeah, that's the big one.
Yeah, and that's the hardest one too.
Oh my God.
One thing that I love about you is the fact that you are both a crazy Star Wars fan, but you also could probably name every film made by like a Jim Jarmusch or a Wong Kar-wai. The fact that you like love Pharrell, love like what did you tell me the other day? That you're like listening to the new album by like
Quavo Takeoff.
Quavo Takeoff, but you also could like recite the lyrics to like every Stephen Sondheim song. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I love this like balance of sensibilities that you have. Can you talk about the ways that that shapes your artistry and like the way that you try to mix and mesh worlds and sensibilities and how that also helps to inform your thoughts around audience?
Oh, audience. Well, I'm a culture vulture. I think it's, my time, I was for a little while in the tech world where I developed an app and we were doing all that stuff. And what was interesting about the tech world is you have to think about the problem you're solving and you have to think about the potential audience before you create your offering. And sometimes we were creating from the inside, not knowing the audience. And I feel like there's some people with what's happening? There's some people. Amanda Parris had to readjust her hand because obviously she doesn't know angles. I feel like we have to know. Like, I've made so much shit that I feel like nobody saw. So like I don't want that feeling, like
Because it's also so hard to make something.
it's so hard to make something and then you make it and you just want so many people to see it and then so like I'm two ways. Like I think my curiosity in keeping the child alive is plugging into what's happening in culture. And frankly, young people are telling the more interesting stories, are making the most interesting music, are making the most interesting art, because when you are in your 20s or when you are young and you are discovering yourself and you're discovering your place in society, you're not bogged down with things like a mortgage. You're not.
But the thing is like yes, to that, you definitely have that, but you also have this deep respect for those that have been doing it for a long time and you're ready to study the masters as well, or even the obscure as well.
Well, I just feel like people who, you have friends who only like 90s hip hop and won't listen to the new shit. And I just think they're stuck. Like, art every year is vital. Because art is always addressing what's happening in the time. So if people were addressing things like post-World War II, that art was as vital as Vietnam War, the stuff that's coming out from that era, which is as vital as things that are being created in the pandemic. Like, art is the mirror of society, and society's always interesting. Because I'm an outsider, I like what's being made. Like, I just want to see what's the best of the different people who are making the best shit in their shit, including country music, including spoken word, like including the shit that I make fun of. But when it's the best of the thing, it's the best. So I'm constantly curating for me what's the best out there.
I mean, you've said in previous interviews that your best advice to an emerging artist would be to write what you know. And you talked about the beginning of your career that you wrote about Filipino culture and you engaged in that in your storytelling because that was the thing that you knew to write about. But now, 20 years in, what are the worlds that you want to imagine and create?
Well, 20 years in, I also know I'm more than just my culture. And I had to really inhabit my culture, and I really had to express my culture to understand that it's just a layer. But some people don't even do that part. And then I feel like they're going to be blocked to the deeper humanity and to the deeper spiritual elements of who a person is. So now, like, you know, and we've talked about it before, like my first 20 years, I was doing for us, by us, FUBU, Filipino, fucking, you haven't seen yourself, I'll put you there. You know, like it was, you know, like, but now it was for us, by us. I wanted to make Filipino stories for Filipinos first, everybody next. But now I think I'm more well-rounded as a human. Obviously, I know what my commonalities are with people outside of Filipinos. Like my friend group is a Rolodex, is a parade of cultures and diversity and gender, like, you know. So now it's like I want to express the highest kind of things about humanity as a Filipino. It no longer needs to be a Filipino to express these things. It could be whoever, but I just have like the added kind of thing about being Filipino.
Right, because now you've written about people in outer space.
Yeah, you know, I can write white people in Newfoundland in the 70s. Like I can do, you know, write dancers. Like, but you know, it's like you'll find there's Filipinos everywhere. Like I'll bring them in because it's still the way I look at the world. But I do want to tell stories outside of the Filipinos to address our larger humanity. And I think now the goal again is joy, childlike wonder, humor. Like those are the things that don't have to just be Filipino anymore for me.
When we started the interview, I listed out a bunch of titles that I think apply to you, and the only one that you said maybe to was mentor. Mm-hmm. What is your reticence to that title?
I mentor a lot, but I also want to just maintain a student mindset and just acknowledge that maybe I don't fucking know anything. Because like what worked for me when I came up is not the same world. Like as a parent, I look at my son and I'm doing my best to say, do these things because it worked for me, but it worked for me then. I grew up in a day when we didn't have email. Like I grew up when people were communicating by chiseling into tablets. It's like, you know what I mean? It's if I was to give you a memo, it's rocks and, you know, and my hairy fist. Amanda. So I want to, so mentor, it's always tricky. I feel like whenever I can, I will offer mentorship, but I feel like there's something hierarchical about that term as well. And I do believe that whoever I'm mentoring, the energy exchanges, I'm learning from them at the same time, and they're mentoring me as well. And mentor is a gender term. Like, why is it mentor and not womentor and womixer? Anyways, so I'm just trying to maintain a student mindset, and then hopefully the exchange is reciprocated.
One thing we haven't talked about is when you became a father. How did that shift and shape your artistry and your approach to your career?
Well, you know, before it was like, fuck work-life balance, like, let's work. So now that's changing. And then, you know, I'm watching what impacts him and how deeply it impacts him. And I've done a bunch of shows for younger audiences. And even with Top Line, I wanted to do it for younger audiences because when shit hits you at 12, or when shit hits you at 7, or when shit hits you at 16, it hits you in a way that as adults, it could be impactful, but only for a minute. Like, do you remember like I don't know, Different World? Like what would have been a show that hit you at 16 or maybe even younger?
Yeah, well, like I was a super book nerd. So as you're saying that, I was thinking about the fact that I still remember all the different stories of the Nancy Drew novels that I read, but I don't remember the details of the last novel that I read like last year or something, you know?
And like Little Women, when did you read that?
I mean, how old was I the first time? I'm not sure, like maybe 8, and I just kept on reading it over and over and over.
Right, and has a book ever had that kind of impact?
Very few books have had the
Very few
impact
books.
that.
So like
yeah.
when in having a child, and you know what it is, like once you have a child, all children are your children. Like that's really how I feel. I feel like, you know, when you're walking in a mall and you see a child by themselves, like I'm their caretaker. And so as a storyteller, I feel like if I'm in a position to make shows for young people, let me do it, not some fucking person that doesn't have the same empathy, superpower number 3 thing, and joy, wonder, racialized experience, feeling like an outsider. It's like, so having a child makes me want to like make stuff that he'll like and that young people will impact them in the proper way, because they're watching horrible things right now.
True. Well, yes.
There's so much horror, like, and there's another thing. It's like the world is so divisive, and sometimes I just want to like not be a part of it and just work in TV and make money and get a cottage by lake.
And get a cottage.
Get a cottage by lake, because you know we all. Anyways, but then it's like, but because there's so much shit, we all live on the internet anyways. Why remove what I have to help, kind of like, to help it out? Yeah.
I'm going to read a quote to you. True leaders are not just people who rise to the top and sit in a room made for one. They are people who build bridges we can continuously cross to meet each other where we're at. Romeo Candido is the rare type of person who has always respected, protected, and insisted on building and maintaining bridges. No matter where he has traveled or how high he has climbed, he has never failed to look back, to return, to hold out his hand, and to make sure we all have a chance to reach new heights. That's from our mutual friend, VT90.
Oh, that's nice.
Can you talk a little bit about this idea of lifting as you climb and reaching back?
Well, when you were talking about bridges, I just kept thinking I was the troll under the bridge, like trying to scare people from like, don't do the art shit. You don't do not.
I don't think that's what she was describing. No.
Well, thanks, VT90, VT90's, VT90 world. I just, you know, and maybe I'm gonna talk about something that we're gonna announce later, but I wanted to give up so many times. Like there's more times I just like, what the fuck am I doing? Let me just go do something else. But then occasionally there would be somebody that would hook me up, like Hamlin Grange. Yes. Anyways, the crew at University. I remember I was so fucking poor, and I could barely pay rent, and I was working. I was working a telemarketing job, and I was like, fuck, I hate this. And then University came, and then they were supporting, they were like really the first, before BIPOC was a term, they were doing it. And then I won an award. And like, this is when I was smoking cigarettes with Malcolm Gladwell in a parking lot randomly, because he had released Tipping Point. Anyways, smoking is bad. But like, I remember winning that award. There was I won a small camera and a little bit of a cash award, and that ended up paying my rent that year or that month, and just got me over the hump. Or then I got fired from Bell Media, Bell Let's Talk, hashtag Bell Let's Talk, about firing your people, and then I had nothing, and then the WGC diverse screenwriter program came, led by Deanna Cadet. That got me over the hump. And then, I didn't get a job on Kim's Convenience. I shadowed on it, and then, I was in the writer's room, but I couldn't get a job. And then a guy named Aaron Martin hired me for my first writing gig for a Netflix show called Another Life. So I'm the universe has always brought me to the brink of it's not going to happen for you. And then someone reaches back and helps me out. And so, it's fortunate, like 20 years ago, if there was a Romeo Candido to help me make a Lolo's Child, then it might have not felt so lonely, or it might not have felt so alienating. And so now, and so, I've done it. Like, it's now just part of like my rubric of success. Is that the right way to use that
I
word?
think so.
My rubric of success
You're a
is
professor, don't you know?
no. I taught the I taught the master's program for at York University Film, and I did not understand what the syllabus was. Anyways, but like for me, the rubric of success is like, yeah, I want to fucking make money now. I say angrily, but I also, if it's just us benefiting, then it's not good enough. Like my rubric of success, when you read my 5-year plan on my notes, it's like year 1, bring 3 new writers in the thing, have a director shout, like it's part of my, as well as, direct Boba Fett or whatever, like it's because
The 5-year plan is in your notes app?
it is. Do you want to share? Do you have one?
Just curious.
But where am I supposed to put?
I
my
don't
5-year
know.
plan?
I
For
just
people,
for
just
some
write a 5-year plan.
I just thought it was like a visual board or
No,
something.
it's like the yellow notes app. It's like, anyways, I need to for my own thing. Like Real Asian, when I was poor and whatever, like they just gave, like every time I've been at the end, somebody helped me get over the hump. And so, as part of 20th anniversary of Real Asian Film Festival, and this is something last night on the toilet came up with the name. I was like, what can I on the toilet? TMI. But like this year, I want to announce at the festival that it's going to be I'm going to be giving what I call the Kalabaw Bursary. Kalabaw is a water buffalo, and on the 20th anniversary of Lolo's Child, my first feature film, playing at Real Asian, I want to give somebody that thing. This year it'll be for post-production finishing fund. Next year it'll be for writing to start somebody. The next year it'll be for production to whatever. But like
Every stage of the process.
at some point I want to touch it, and then hopefully it won't just be me taking my working mom's money to help a Filipino, but like other people will, because I've had the hand just help me get over the hump, and so now I just want to do that for other people and show that that success, because I carry my culture on my back every time I'm on a film set, or every time I share that, oh, look at me, I did something. It's not a brag to brag. It's a I show it to show other people that it could be done. And like I have all the L's and losses on my record. So, but when I have a win, I'm sharing it not to like big myself up, but like it's to show that it can be done. So with the Kalabaw Bursary, that's part of my building a bridge to that person or to the multiple people who just think that maybe I should have listened to my parents and not done this shit. So that's kind of like, and then hopefully they employ me and hire me when they're the boss.
Well, that's an amazing note to end on. Congratulations on 20 years in the game.
20 years in the game. Yeah, hey.
That's it.
Thanks, Amanda Parris and Relation Film Festival, and to all Asians.
Okay, well, we're just going to end.